Hi, Rick DiClemente with my partner, Liza Jane Brown. Good to be with you tonight, and thank you for joining us from wherever you are. Good to have you join in. And I try to arrange these weeks so that we get a little light and a little heavy, little light and a little heavy. Uh, Tonight is talking about the immediate near future. And the reason why is because there's so much happening. You can see I'm already losing my voice, so I'm glad she's here. Eliza will be commenting mainly on the social aspects and astrological. We'll do a little of each, but she's much better than I am on the social implications. Implications is an Aquarian word. This, if you got this and you got that, what does that mean? That's an Aquarian count. Look around with your Aquarian friends. You got this and you got that, that means this. And that's where Liza is so great at. Okay, anyhow, we're going to go right to the charts and explain what's happening, the four things that are coming up in the near future. They're going on right now, and they're quite formidable and they're quite challenging. A lot of them are downright bad. Some of it's downright good. And we're going to let you know how they operate and try to give some explanation to you of what you've been feeling. Because if you've been feeling what's going on out in the world, you can feel this stuff. So let's get right to the charts. Okay. The first thing, let me get this all set up here. Okay. The first thing in the United States chart, and remember, nobody knows when the United States was born, so we're not quite sure of the rising sign, but you can see the United States is a very powerful chart with the sun next to Jupiter and Venus and the moon down in Aquarius. And it was later in life, after 1776, that we added Neptune and we added Eris and we added Pluto in 1930 and we added Chiron in 1977 and we added Uranus in the 1700s. Well, the number one thing, without a doubt, in the whole history of the United States is Pluto is now back around. It's about right here. It's about return to where it started. I'm going to put the double chart together. All right. Now, let me stop sharing and sharing your screen. Okay. So now you're going to see where the planets are now. The birth chart is in the middle. Well, this is right now in August. So the outer planets move very slowly. We're looking at the Pluto return. Look at it. Pluto's got to get to 2732. It's at 24. It won't be returning till around February. Well, we're talking close now. September, October, November, December, January, February. We're talking 6 months till the Pluto return is exact after 250 years. Okay, Pluto's heavy duty. Now I'm going to differentiate for you what's happening for the US versus what's happening for the world. The Pluto return is solely an American feature. The next thing that's happening, which is outrageous, and it's only American. No, it is. It is American, yes. Neptune, transiting Neptune, is opposite where it started. We've talked about this before. The natal Neptune in 1776 has gone around once and one half. So Neptune is opposite Neptune, which is causing the disinformation, it's causing the COVID, etc., and it's making a T-square to Mars. You see that Mars at 21, 22, 22? This is very, very powerful. This is the delusion of the public, the disinformation of the public. The next thing is maybe more important than any of them, is Pluto is squaring Eris. Pluto and Eris, the two big bodies out there. They're very, very strong. 1 second, please. There you go.
I feel like Edith Ann sitting in the big chair. You guys remember on Laugh-In, Lily Tomlin in the great big chair? Well, Rick was talking about Pluto and Eris and Neptune, and some of the backstory, which you might have heard before about Pluto, is that it entered in Capricorn in the, I should have my ephemeris open, probably about what, 2008, I think, I'm not sure, but somewhere in the mid 2000s. And what that signified was, and this is kind of like, it all kind of works together and is a prelude to what Rick's talking about with the Pluto return in the United States chart, is when the day that Pluto went into Capricorn was the day that the first bank failed in that series of bank failures in the mid 80s. I think it was Goldman Sachs. And we had written an article. This is like one of the first things we had written together, talking about the implications of Pluto going into Capricorn. And Capricorn really has to do with, among other things, our institutions. You might have heard us talk about this report. I know Linda knows all about it. I guess Marcia does too. They're not nodding their heads. But anyway, that was when the banks all failed. And for a while, it looked like things were going to get better with the banks, but they really, we're still dealing with a lot of scandal and problems with our financial institutions and how they really serve the people rather than other rich people. That's been ongoing since that time, because they were all bailed out, and are actually doing better than they were before, to our detriment. So that happened. That was when all of the scandals with the church really started coming out, with the priests abusing people and other scandals with the Catholic Church. So that institution, which was, nobody had, it was just like, the church and religion, nobody could criticize that before. That's when the Boy Scout scandals came out. So all of these things started to come out then. And as a result of that, we really started questioning our institutions, things that we had always believed in and we thought would never change and we could always count on. That was when, in modern times, we really started to question all of that. So that was a real prelude and kind of like the beginning of what we're starting to see now. It was other types of institutions, which I can't really, none come to mind right now. Can any of you think of any other kinds of things that you always believed in around that time that you were shocked to find out the truth about, or that you couldn't trust them anymore?
Well, I know, like the Boy Scouts in church, all that. I mean, personally, Mr. Rogers was my nemesis. And when that movie came out recently, I mean, even that I never had a trust in, so I mean, I had issues, no doubt. But with every, it just kind of proved to me that everything was untrustworthy, especially church, mama.
Yeah, so that's true. Other things that started happening around then, and of course there have always been things like volcanoes and earthquakes and tidal waves and forest fires, but right about that time was when we first started noticing like a greater increase in those kinds of things, like really large environmental disasters. And of course, that was kind of a prelude to what we're starting to experience now, which is really, really scary, but that's Plutonian as well. All things having to do with the earth, like volcanoes and earthquakes. Now, Neptune being related to the sea has a lot to do with things like, or with water, has a lot to do with like flooding and tidal waves. There was a huge tidal wave back then too that affected the Pacific, the islands in the Pacific. So what we're seeing now with Pluto, opposite Pluto, which is Rick has explained to you before, even though it's United States, in the United States chart, since the United States is such an influence in the rest of the world, any of the aspects that hit the United States chart also affect things worldwide. You're seeing,
You're right. No, go ahead.
no.
You're right
he's
on
back.
track. You're right on track.
Yeah.
I'll feel them. Go ahead.
Okay, well,
I'll pick up. if you
go
have
ahead,
to,
pick
then-
up. Go ahead.
Well, then we'll switch.
Okay.
All right. So there's no way to soften the blow of all this stuff. In essence, the big one is Pluto squaring Eris. And the reason that's big is people still aren't tracking Eris. People don't understand what the Erisian power is about. It's a brand new dwarf planet beyond Pluto, and people are feeling it. This is the feeling you're getting now, and we're getting it mixed up with the Pluto conjunction, the Pluto coming back to Pluto. We're getting it mixed up with this brand new planet Eris, which happens to be square to both. Eris is that energy that is fed up. It can't stand rules. It can't stand corporate stuff. It can't stand anything that's official getting in the way of real equality in the people. It's totally out for, it's totally out for getting balance and getting fairness to the people. And if you're pulling any kind of smoke and mirrors, any kind of BS on the people, Pluto, Eris meets it all with discord. It meets it with discord. And this is why the Trumpers are screaming about end the BS. Stop the swamp. Or stop the swamp. Drain the swamp, right. Okay, now, in the meantime, you've got a good side and a bad side to that. You've got a real swamp and you've got another swamp that's replacing the other swamp. You've also got parties out there acting as if they're trying to help drain the swamp, but they're really trying to increase the swamp. So it all comes down to, don't deceive yourself. It all comes down to the people with the big money trying to keep the poor people poor, just like for always. So that's what's happening with Pluto Eris. That's what's happening with Pluto. Now with Pluto, what's happening is we're being forced to, and we have a chance to, redefine our solar image. It's like a identity crisis. So you may not realize it, but we're in the middle of an identity crisis on every issue. Every issue in this country is up for grabs. And what a lot of us are trying to do collectively, a lot of us are trying to rest on our laurels. And that ain't going to work anymore. And one of the number one things I keep telling you for years that Pluto does when it finds things getting off track is it starts to separate you from your support systems. So the US is going to go overseas and it's going to just naturally rely that other people are going to support us because they always have been, and they're going to stop. They're going to stop supporting us. And we already see nationwide, worldwide, that the number one danger in the world they feel is us. And there's no doubt about it. Now, we have an awful lot of good things in this country, but one of our biggest problems is that we're resting on our laurels and we just think that somebody's going to come out of nowhere and save us. Well, nobody's going to come out of anywhere and save us. And there are at least several countries that wish us a lot of ill. So one of the reasons that it's so big right now is people are feeling this Erisian power inside them, and they're also feeling it from the collective. This is very hard to describe. Everybody I see, it's different combinations. Some people, they're feeling it inside. They don't feel it from the collective. Some people feel it all from the collective, nothing from inside. So when you feel Eris from inside, you should be feeling restless, like you want to speak up to people that you haven't spoke up before. You're not necessarily worried about being tactful. You just want the results that you're just fed up. You just want the results to get unfairness settled and injustices settled. It's real important that you do. On the other side, some people don't feel it inside. They're feeling it from the collective. And you can see it in the Black Lives Matter. You can see it in all these different nations that are uprising, and the Indian people and the Afghan people. People want to be done and finished collectively so that we can all speak out and have equality. Well, you see that whole question of all these myths of America, truth and justice forever and equality for all. We see real clearly that's not true. That's not real. So that's had to die hard. That's had to die hard in the American psyche. So what we're doing is trying to figure out how we're going to replace it with what. So one of the reasons that I wanted Liza on tonight is to talk about grassroots campaigns, because whatever field of thought you go out and examine now, whether you're looking at another country, whether you're looking at international scholars, national scholars, what it is that you're hearing, you're always going to hear stuff 10 years after the astrologers figured it out. The astrologers got their finger on this stuff 10 years ago, okay? Well, you're starting to hear now grassroots campaigns. This is what Liza told me about 13 years ago. In other words, we're not going to replace these broken systems with other systems. They're going to have to come up from their grassroots. So I think that's the real main thing about this now, because I don't think we're going to be able to replace a capitalism, a broken one, with another one. We're not going to replace it with this country's desire to have a socialism. So we're going to merge into something new. And it really comes down to whether you're sitting there worried or not and wondering how it's going to work out. It's all going to work out if we have honesty in our approach. There's no magic here. The reason the US is dying is because we've gone away from our mission statement. We have sailed away from our mission statement. And as soon as we get our mission statement corrected and back on track, the sooner we'll be okay. But people keep asking us, when are we going to be okay? When is the virus going to go away? There's no answer to these questions. And the answer, what we've seen, what Liz has been barking about way before I became aware of it, is, and I want to ask her to talk about now, is this whole thought of grassroots campaigns.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that Kim is here tonight, because I think that the basis as a Course in Miracles person, and maybe the rest of you are, but is that we have to approach everything from a standpoint of love instead of fear. So that's the basis. And we've kind of lost our way on all of that. And maybe I'm going back too far, but I wanted to talk to you about what some people theorize is what life was like for human beings in the very beginning, when we were hunter-gatherers, and we walked through the world, and we basically operated on what is called a gift economy. Whatever nature had to provide to us in terms of survival, food or water, everything, we took what was there and we went on, and we didn't try to take too much. A lot of people in certain circles are talking more today about how that all changed. Well, now back to the permeable part. When we were living in that state, we were so in touch with nature and what was going on around us and what was going on in the sky and with the planets too, but also just with the weather and the animals. And we were close to the animals. And I remember reading something that just gave me chills. They were talking about cave paintings of of animals, and by looking at those, one of the archaeologists or anthropologists said that that a medicine man did not evoke the wolf when he was doing his ceremonies. He became the wolf, and that we all had that, and we still do if we would cultivate it, but had that capacity to do that. So we've lost that. And it started probably from what the experts are saying, when we started living in one place and started growing crops, especially grain. And at that point, nature became, we weren't one with nature anymore. We were trying to master nature. We were trying to master the weather and the rain and control it for our purposes. And that was the beginning of our splitting from nature. So we look where we are now. We don't really need to talk about details about that at this point, I don't think. But the point of all of that is that we have become so separate from what is going on around us in nature and in the reality of the cosmos. And that we have become detached from that, and a lot of good things have come out of that. Certainly, we could outline those or make lists of those, but some of the things that have come about that are not good are what we're talking about now, with climate change, with poverty, with war, with strife, with, all the differences in class and economics. And what a lot of people think we need to do is kind of, I did copy down a quotation, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard this before. But it's by T.S. Eliot, who said, "We shall not cease from exploration, and at the end of our exploring, we'll arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." So we can look back at those early days of us and think about those days of the hunter-gatherers and their appreciation of the planet, and combine them with what we have learned, the good things that what we have learned since that time, and maybe create the planet over into something that is wonderful again, where we can survive and thrive. So grassroots is certainly in our, even before the term grassroots, one of Rick's friends, who I don't know if any of you know, but it was a friend of his online, her name, Dina's?
Well, her name on the Democratic Underground, her name was One Grassroot.
One Grassroot. And I've always loved that. So we each need to be one grassroot for the planet, and join with others. But it's also for ourselves as individuals, and for our families, that we do that. I'm not talking too fast, am I?
Yeah, take your time.
Okay.
It takes a while to learn to talk slower. Take your time. There's no hurry.
Okay.
They're not going anywhere.
Okay.
They're taking it all in.
So I guess we can look at it in a lot of different ways as to whether we actually, to what extent we create our own reality. But I think we all agree that we make certain choices on a conscious level that do affect our reality. And certainly one of the choices that we can make is to figure out a way to be a grassroot. Hi, Paula. I was just saw you there. Is to be a grassroot. And we can do that in a lot of different ways. I know a lot of people contribute money to environmental and political causes and things like that. But in addition to that, if we are so moved, it's very important that we do something to enrich the world. And you probably all you guys are already doing this, but you know, whether you devote time to a charity or to a political group or do something to make the world a better place,
Okay.
you're doing all of those efforts combined, and the intention and the consciousness that goes into that really does, those things really do contribute not only to your well-being, but really to the rest of the planet.
See, Shelby's up there saying, "Hey, Rick's on. Look." Well, one of the things that's so important to point out here, globally, we're all experiencing Pluto square to Eris. I cannot even begin to explain to you how powerful that is. Okay, I'm just a old astrologer, around a long time, 43 years. Laz been around 44 years. So we have a lot of years in astrology, and we'll be glad to get into it more and more. But one of the things I want to say, Marcia and I, we're both born close together, and we're both born with Jupiter next to Eris. When you're born with Jupiter in Aries next to Eris, it's very powerful. And granted, Marcia's delivery is a lot different than mine. But one of my things, mine's in the third house. Mine is about speaking, and I do know a good bit about astrology. But one of the main things I want to say to you is we're all kick-ass people on this screen. You know, I look at the other astrologers on YouTube, and they got thousands of followers. Maybe I find the buttons a couple, I pick up a couple more. I'm not sure. But cleavage has a lot to do with seeing thousands of followers on some of these astrologers. And it's unbelievable, some of the stuff they talk about, like where Venus is going to be this weekend and where Mars is going to hit you for a couple of days. We're not talking about that stuff. We're talking about big era stuff. We're talking about the end of the Dark Ages, part 2. So, if you know, these people can watch those kind of astrologers if they want, but that's not what we do. And we try to inspire because we're not better than everybody. We inspire because we look out and see you, and you guys keep coming back week after week. You are some powerful people, and we need to inspire you in case you are behaving too much. Because you're very strong, and we need a lot of voices to object to the ridiculous voices that we've been subjected to in the last 6-7 years. People are saying the most ridiculous stuff. And I remind you, we are in Southwest Pennsylvania. So we had a lot to do with Mr. Biden winning that election. And this is Trump land through here. And it's not just that, it's the whole mentality. It's the whole mentality of, I'm going to get mad at the system because the system didn't provide for me, versus let's come together in Aquarian methods and come together and come up with our ideas and work together. I've watched her from ground zero create a whole new Democratic sub-party in southwestern PA called Democrats.
New Deal Democrats.
Of Fayette County, a very red county. I've watched her work, and people are coming on and people are coming along. And some people just aren't going to come along until you lead them. They're just not going to. Some people just can't do it. Well, I don't care why. It's not in their charts. It's not in their nature. And it's really, like Terry says, inch by inch, baby steps. Well, right now we're getting Saladas foot by foot in big steps because we're in a lot of trouble. We are in a lot of trouble. It took us a lot of years to feel like we could start talking as if we saw things. Because for years we had to keep our mouths shut because we couldn't freak everybody out about the nature of the planets. And the nature is very, very clear. So when you're looking at Neptune opposite Neptune, what's happening, it's almost a joke that this is happening in the United States chart at the same time that Pluto is being squared by Eris. Neptune opposite Neptune is a spiritual trial. We're going through a spiritual crisis as a country. And that means the death of a lot of the churches that need to die, and the rebirth of a lot of the types of churches that need to be reborn. The ones that are speaking the truth, not the ones trying to get your money and get you to watch your commercials or watch their station. Neptune is about real love of people to people. It's that simple. So one way to encapsulate tonight's discussion is this. You know what's going on. Every one of you know what's going on. You know what you need to do. You know what needs to be said. Now, in terms of astrology, you tune in here and learn some of the pieces. So astrologically, the country is going through Pluto return, which is a humongous identity crisis, threatening our very existence. Why? Without a doubt, because we've drifted from our mission. Pluto squaring Eris is happening worldwide. And that means the worldwide, we've not done a very good job worldwide of taking care of the planet, taking care of each other, taking care of the planet. Look what's going on in Afghanistan. It just breaks your heart to watch some of this stuff. The Neptune opposite Neptune is solely United States. But there's enough going on for everybody. There's enough to go around. Now, one of the ways that you can access the Pluto part of you, and it's inside of all of us, is to get mad. One of the greatest forces you'll see in astrology is have you ever seen a Scorpio person that is pissed off? Have you ever seen a Scorpio pissed off? You better get out of the room, get out of the county. Because it's that kind of passion. And it's almost always right. Now, sometimes Scorpios have a bad habit of saying you betrayed them when you really didn't. And that's one of their downfalls. But one of the great things that we have at our disposal is to get mad. In a lot of ways, a lot of the Trump people were doing that, but they went too far out to the other extreme with their capital stuff. And they want to call the capital stuff an uprising or something with daisies all around it instead of talking about what it really was. But there are forces out there that want us separate. They want us to fight each other. They want us in a civil war. And we can't fall prey to that. And we've got to start inching closer and closer to these planets coming out of Capricorn, going into Aquarius, because when the planets go into Aquarius, what does Aquarius bring to us as an overall archetype?
Well, Aquarius is all about equality and treating everybody equal as their brothers and sisters and helping each other that way.
Idealistic.
Very idealistic, yes. Very, and Aquarius brings an element of innovation and invention and new ways of doing things or of looking at things.
The biggest thing about Aquarius is they're the 11th sign of the zodiac. It's a very advanced position. And they're really, really good about seeing that what I do for you, you do for me. What we do together matters. We're going to have to do this together, cooperating. That's what I see. So I think that even though it's early, I think we should open the phone lines to you and we'll address, unless you have something specific.
Yeah, I did have.
Okay, we'll go on with your few things, and then when you're ready, we'll open the phone lines and we'll have some discussion back and forth.
Okay. I just wanted to talk about the whole idea of how we approach these issues that we have, political issues and social issues that we have. We're finding out through the New Deal Democrats is pretty much this quotation that I came across today, where this Nigerian shaman was quoted as saying, "There are no facts, there are only stories." We've tried to approach talking to people about platforms, the democratic platforms and things that we think will help people. We found that trying to supply people with facts about that does not really work very well. You probably know that people are just overwhelmed with hearing about this COVID statistics. That really doesn't seem to work anymore, to quote statistics. But what does seem to work, and the approach that we are starting to take, is about telling stories, either telling our stories or asking other people to tell their stories about what is important to them, what their childhoods were like, what types of things influence them. And I think that those are ideas, that concept is something that we can use as individuals to talk to people. Ask them, if we're trying to talk to people about politics or about social programs that will help them, find out what's important to them by asking for and telling their stories as an approach. So I did want to say that.
Okay.
So,
Whatever you have to add, it's fine.
okay. I also wanted to talk just a minute about the whole idea of joy, because we're talking about such serious subjects, and they really are serious. But if we can find a way to create a life for ourselves in which there is joy, in which there is happiness, in which there's satisfaction, we're actually influencing the reality of the whole planet toward joy. And we are therefore changing the reality of the planet. So even though we're going to be involved, or we are involved in very serious times and serious work, I think it's important that we find ways to lead lives of joy in the midst of all of the sorrow and the other pain that's around us.
Also, I want to point out something that I think is really important. A lot of people are really weak. A lot of people are just weak. They don't lead, they follow. And that's all right, because once they start following, they show their own strength. We're all different. That's why the zodiac has so many different facets to it. One of the things I think we need to do is to do what Reverend Kim does. And that's why I'm so glad she's here today. And that is to include people with a smile. I don't care what story you're telling, your voice says whether you feel they're included or not. And yourself, oh my God, it's so magical how you end the story with a smile. And everybody just kind of stops thinking any negative thoughts they had towards you. They really largely go towards positive, because we're all in it together. And we've got some real creeps up above us. We've got some real creeps that are, we've seen the upside down opposite of the trickle down. We've seen how it all got sucked up. All this stuff with trickle down bullshit. It all got sucked up to Jeff Bezos and a couple people holding all the money. And it ain't working, Mr. Bernie Sanders, is it? And we got to speak out, and we got to raise a little hell, and we just don't have the time to be real super kind and nice about it. So we need to be kind of forceful, but put a smile at the end. And you put a smile at the end. And I love what Liza's talking about, which is you go out into a political discussion, you try to convince somebody of your opinion, you could just forget it. But if you ask them for their story and they hear your story, there's nothing that can beat campfire stories, is there? Sitting around a campfire, having a little drink and telling stories to each other, because we all feel it's so primal. It's so correct. It's so natural. And it's going to win. So the point is, there's no way astrologically to tell you whether we're going to lose or win. It's not known. So I tell all people asking me questions not to start any question with the word will, because I don't know. If you put will in front of it, put the answer with it. I don't know, but it's up to us. And we're just some outrageous people. The other thing is, I've been talking a long time about getting support from somewhere. I don't know what's happening with the UFOs. I don't know what's happening with the guardian angels. I don't know what's happening with the spirituality on the planet, which is really, really, really growing fast. It sure seems to me like some supernatural forces are helping us, but we got to help it along. And if we can answer anything astrologically for you, whatever, let's open the phone lines up. Just raise your hand. I'll make a note of, the other pen? Yeah, I'll make a note of how we're doing. Whoever raised your hand first, we'll put you on and we'll have a discussion. If you guys, Marcia, I'll get to you. If you guys on YouTube are watching, you ever want to join us live on Thursdays, Thursday nights, 8 o'clock Eastern, go to Google, type in Astrology Unplugged, and you will get the link. Marcia, if you will unmute yourself, we will be on with you. Go ahead.
I really loved, Liza, what you spoke about storytelling. And when you were talking about earlier about the hunter-gatherers and early humankind, even before language developed, people were able to tell stories through sign language and through sound and gesture. And I think storytelling is just an incredible tool for us all to maybe take a little dab at. And it's theater, but it's also it's communication, and it can have a very powerful message. But I just love the fact that if we get back to basics, if we get back to basic human instincts, it's storytelling. You're so right on about that.
Well, 1974 and 75, I was in Kentucky in the mountains making movies about Appalachia with a place called Apple Shop that still exists. And down came two people from this group tonight, Marcia and Anita, and they joined me in the mountains. And it wasn't their thing to make movies. Instead, tell them what you guys started doing.
Oh, we had a theater troupe and we told stories. And
What were you called?
we were called, what were we called?
Story peddlers.
Story peddler. And we also we told stories about Jack tales and old stories from the mountains and about Jack. And then we had music, and it was a real collaboration. And
How were you received when you got people down to that story level?
Very well, very, very well. And if you even think of just kids just are so attracted to stories. And, I think it's great if we can get back to that and get back to the inner kid in us, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, but people responded very well.
Well, that was wonderful. And then they cloned another subgroup off of you in Morgantown. I remember that. Well, thank you, Marcia. Yeah, those are some good memories. Time does fly. Anybody else with a question, just raise your hand. Anything astrological, anything about the social stuff that we're talking about. Terry, you're swatting a fly, or did you raise your hand? I'm going to unmute you. Yeah, you're
Okay.
right, Terry.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I've been following you for a long time. I'm known as Mo Misty on Facebook. So
Well, Mo missed.
nice to meet you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I'm really happy that you're doing what you're doing, and glad to be here. I'm in California in the Central Coast, and we've got, the skies are red, and we don't have fires except hundreds of miles away, but it's that way. And we had them last year, and the drought, but I always had a theory that if we don't do something, the planet's just going to vomit, and there we go. We'll start over.
Maybe.
But it's
Maybe.
nice to know people. It's nice to know people. Like when I meet people, everybody's so frightened. Everybody, the mask and no mask and this and this. but just to be kind, like you say, it's great. Thank you.
Well, you are welcome. Let me ask you, Terry, why do you think people are so afraid?
They're afraid because they have to get off the wheel now.
What's that
We've
mean?
all become sheep. We've all just marched. And about the church, you know, I was trafficked as an infant by the Catholic Church. I was molested by a priest when I was young. But it didn't destroy my faith, because church is not faith. And the
Exactly.
spiritual, whatever, the angels and all the whatever was around to protect me, to bring me where I needed to be, like you. We're all where we're supposed to be.
Very, very good, Terry. Thank you much. I want to come to John in just a minute. John asks, before I do, I want to go down by the Rio Grande and talk with the wonderful Reverend who's got outrageous t-shirts every time she's on. I want to talk to you about, I know you're heavily involved, very heavily involved for years with trying to establish really a different kind of church. Tell us the difference of what I'm not trying to put Jesus down, because Jesus is the number one in your church too, but there are differences. What's going on with the new thought where people are turning away from old biblical prose and turning towards Course in Miracles types of thought? What do you think's happening with that transition? You are
Rick, are you talking?
Yeah,
Are you talking to Reverend Kim or John? I thought.
I'm talking to the Reverend Kim. There you are.
Well,
John,
I'll tell you what what I have come to know. I was raised with Jesus. I mean, we go to church and they always shout the kids in there, go get Jesus, you know, and it was great. And as Terry said, yeah, all that abuse stuff. And my first divorce, oh my God, the guy that had baptized me told me my dad would be back in the mental hospital. I mean, all the whole thing, I'll just go to Mexico and find God, and by 1980, went down for the big mushroom trip north of Oaxaca. I was looking for, of course, did. And it has come to my realization through my family of origin, as well as everywhere I end up being taken, which is right now on the border. I'm halfway between El Paso and the tip of Texas on the Rio Grande. That's Kiko's home. And right now they are picking up like 900 people a day sometimes.
For what?
Now it's finally hit those little 30,000 people. And people are having to come together. We must learn to love one another. First we kind of learned to value ourselves. And now, as the Course of Love says, allow all things. There is no sin. There is whatever the addict or the prisoners or whatever. That's just bullshit. We've just been put the belt somewhere. We must unite. It must start with families, as I'm learning, as I'm taking care of Mama and my sister, who both terrorized me as a kid. And Mama was a alcoholic. Got her out of rehab a couple of weeks ago, and she tried to break 3 nurses' fingers. I mean, nothing's changed, but what has changed is I have changed. It's me. It ain't thee. It's what is that to thee, Kim, if I got a problem with Mama? Why do I care if Mama reads my thoughts? She always has. That's how we communicated. We never spoke. It was always mentally. And so with, a Course in Miracles, my only thought, Course of Love, my only thought is union. What does that mean to you? Then you got to start thinking about what does union. And what Jesus, who channeled a Course of Love too, says is that now you get to start acting like who you are to me, instead of what we've been doing is acting like who God was to us.
Right. If we mimic him, we'll end up okay. Wrong idea. Well, that's really, really good. And I like the fact that you keep it real simple. You know, I really like that. I know you are a Virgo, and that even makes it better. But it really is simple. What the hell's wrong with the world is we're not loving each other enough. I don't care if you're gay and you're straight and you're purple and you're green. We're all okay. And someone's done an awful lot of teaching to us that you're not okay. And that's got to go. Thank you, Reverend, very much. I want to go to John S. in Columbus and ask John, because John and I have been around a long time now. And John not only is extremely smart and a good astrologer, John has been doing a lot of work with a new type of education that I think is really another example, another grassroots. And this is being this type of education, which is called emotional education. Can you teach us about that, John?
Yeah, thanks, Rick, and good to see you as well, as always. Yeah, so it's something that I think is very timely for where we are as a country. So it's social emotional learning. Some people call it SEL, some people call it EQ, emotional intelligence. And I think it's been around for decades. And I think it's something that's really come to the fore now because of the pandemic. I think because I think in the, let's say in the evolution of the country, I think people are finally realizing that it's necessary. That, I mean, we're being hit with all these crises, challenges, there's so much information out there, but people aren't, up until recently, haven't really understood the need to be aware. And not about this, like, I mean, we talk about the hamster wheel that goes through people's minds, and I know you've talked into that too, Rick, but like here, connecting with your heart and being aware of your emotions. And like, I mean, when you don't understand what you're feeling, it's so easy for people to push your buttons. It's so easy for people to get you riled up. I mean, that's what they do. That's what we see on the cable news and all the things. Like, I mean, they keep pushing your prejudices, your beliefs, whatever, and they get people like all in a frenzy. So SEL, or social emotional learning, is about learning how to like understand your emotions, understand the things that, you know, like the things that you like, the things that you dislike, and being present to that and being able to hold an emotion, hold a feeling in a place where you can look at it and say, oh, okay, well, I mean, you don't have to take action on it, but you can see it. And so that's one of the things that I'm really focused on now, as far as in education, bringing that into schools. It's that, I mean, in my particular role, that's something that I've really taken on and I want to push forward with. And I've done a number of workshops around this. I mean, both as a student, but also facilitated them myself. And that's my contribution. Like I'm hearing you say, Liza, like, what are your gifts? What can you do to make a positive difference in the world in light of all the crises? And I feel like this is the one thing. There's a lot of things that could save the world, but I think this is one of those key pieces that as we all become more emotionally intelligent, more emotionally aware, I think it's going to shift a lot of things in education and our social interactions and so forth.
Yeah, because now it's so easy to look back and see in the 50s and 60s that we were not brought up with this. We were just assumed, the parents assumed that the church was doing it. Church assumed the school was doing it. Nobody was doing it. You know, there wasn't much emotional talk across my supper table. It wasn't much emotional understanding. Everybody just assumed that everybody's okay. And that wasn't the case.
Yeah. I mean, on top of that, Rick, it's like generationally, so many of us were taught stuff your emotions down. Like, I mean, like, think of all the things you've heard, like as a man, as a guy. Oh, real men don't cry. Real men don't have tears. You stuff that down. You suck it up and deal with it. Like all those things that you're told. And so we have all these people. I think a lot of the anger in the world that we have now is people who they've stuffed it down to the point that it just explodes. I
mean, that's why exactly right, because that's what Pluto and Eris do. Is they blow out the carbon. They blow out all the stuff that's been jammed down.
Absolutely. So I think if you have the skills, if you know how to process through these on your own. Maybe when you do get that Pluto transit or the Mars transit, maybe it's not quite as explosive, right? Or at least you know how to channel it in a way that's constructive. You can go exercise instead of like taking it out and beating up your neighbor, or, doing something horrible like that, right?
Well, yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I really encourage everybody. We need as many grassroots stuff plugged into the earth and starting to grow as possible. Thank you, John. I'm going to go to
Absolutely.
our traveling gypsy in Montana. She started out. I want to go to Susan A from Cleveland, who has been, what talk about an Eris transit. She checked it all out, cashed it all in, got herself a mobile home, and she's traveling the world sketching it. Now she's made her way up to Montana. How things going up there?
Really nice. I'm on a beautiful alpaca ranch in St. Ignatius, which is a tiny town that is actually in the middle of the Flathead Indian Reservation,
Wow.
which I had no idea that was even possible. But boy, this is lovely. It's a little valley surrounded by mountains on all sides. And the weather has turned really, really nice. I mean, I'm in heaven. I've got a beautiful view of all the alpacas out my window. Two really big dogs that are guarding them. They're Anatolian shepherds, which I had never heard of before.
Wow.
Really neat. I went and talked to somebody here, and he was just picking vegetables that are going to go to the farmer's market tomorrow. Here, have some. So I came back with a bucket full of, yellow squash and tomatoes and whatnot. And tomorrow morning at 8:30, I'm going to meet them in the little store. This is through Harvest Host. So the deal is you camp and you exchange in exchange for being able to camp on these lovely properties. You purchase from the people who own the properties. So I'll be buying something interesting from the alpaca store. I don't know what's in there. We'll see.
That's terrific. I wanted to ask you, because I know you're Sagittarian and you're really intrigued by travel and expanding. What are you finding the mood of the people out through the common folks on the farms?
I've had one long conversation that did get political with a farmer who was a very nice guy, Farmer Jerry. And it turned out his wife died a few years ago. He was lonely, and that's why he signed up to Harvest Host people. And so he enjoyed sitting and chatting with people from all over. And I don't know if he's truly representative of the common man. He was in a tiny little burg in Indiana somewhere. And he was certainly opposed to big agri, but he wanted nothing to do with government regulation. So he was waiting for consumers to take charge and make the changes with their dollar. And I tried to point out historically, when has that actually happened? Because I did teach history for 4 billion years, and he didn't have any answers for that. So I don't know. I sure don't have any answers. I don't know how to solve it. But the people are more divided than they've ever been, without a doubt.
Well, why do you think they're divided?
I think it always comes down, the bottom line I was taught, and I've not seen any contrary evidence, so I'm going to go with the bottom line is always your pocketbook. People vote their pocketbook. That's just the way it goes. You're a farmer, you're going to vote for somebody or some political party that is supposedly working in your interests. One of the problems, of course, is nobody tells the truth about what they're really supporting. You know, we had a president for 4 years who lied about everything, up, down, and sideways. This is what still confuses me, is why anybody still believes or buys into any of that. Makes no sense.
Well, there are a lot of reasons they buy into it. One of the main reason is what happens if they believe the opposite, and they're so scared of the opposite. Thank you, Susan. Buy an alpaca if you can. Bring one home so we can see it. And
There's a cute little brown one I've got my eye on.
name him Unplugged, would you?
Sure.
Call him Unplugged. Thank you very much. I want to go to John H., who's with us in Pittsburgh, because John has
Can I just
of course
interrupt to say,
of course you can.
I'm wearing a T-shirt that says,
What's it
That's-
say?
it says, you can't see it from here, but it says, "That's a terrible idea. What time?" And I think that, it resonates for me as a Sag. So I just
I
want
think
to say
that's
that.
marvelous. Bring it back, we'll sell some. Thank you, Susan. Have fun. Tune in on your next trip. John, I want to go to you because John has been a lawyer for 450 years. And John is a very, very bright, enlightened man. And Liza and I, we watch a lot of shows, and we often wonder where some of these people get their sentencing from. We just can't figure why one woman will get 2 years and the man that did the equivalent gets life, etc. So what do you find going on with legal reform?
Are you talking to me as a lawyer or
Just, I don't care about your lawyer. What does John think?
I'll tell you really quickly about law. I think where law should come from is there's something that goes on between a mother and a baby. She loves that baby, and maybe that baby grows up to be a little brat and has siblings, and they fight, and she tells the siblings, "You've got to get along and be nice to him." And the reason she's saying that is because she knows that she loves him, and that love is really the most important thing. And law should be based on that. That's where it comes from. Psychologically, humanistically, phenomenologically, that's where law originates, between somebody who loves somebody else and they won't hurt this little baby, and they don't want anyone else to hurt this little baby. So we call it justice, but without love, there is no justice. And people turn justice into punishment and anger and hatred. It's a distortion of the real fundamental source of law and justice. Now, if I teach in a law school, okay, I teach paralegals. If I try to talk to the judges, the lawyers, look, what you're talking about is love. It all comes down to love. They won't see it.
Why won't they see it?
Well, okay, I was in church on Sunday, and it's a Presbyterian church, okay? And this family came in, and there was this little girl with them. And there was something about this little girl that made me think, this is the only person in this building that understands. And what Lisa said about the inner child, I have an inner child, and I'm in communication with God, okay? But it's not my mind and it's not my heart. It's something that combines the two of them. Maybe, I don't know what to call it, your soul, but it's your real self. And that's like a child. That's the way we come into this world. We come in that way. And then something happens. We get educated, we get changed to hate, not to love.
Where do you think the legal
Okay, where it's
where
broken.
did it go south?
It's part of society. Just like society is going south. The law doesn't make things happen. The law follows society. It's people who vote for laws to be what they are because they know what the people, what the people that vote for them want. So there's nothing in the law inherently that makes it good or that makes it based on love. It's all based on politics and voting and legislatures, and then people who have political ideas who get to be judges. I've known some terrible judges. When I became a lawyer, I have a gift. When I left the seminary, I didn't have a job, and I got this job selling encyclopedias. All right. And I had no sense of how to sell, but I was leading the office in sales, and it's because I can sell. When I talk to people, they believe me. And so I thought this was terrible. I'm manipulating people. I'm in control of people. I have this gift. But when I became a lawyer, that became a gift instead of a curse. You know, I could tell juries, I could sell the Brooklyn Bridge. But I'm retired now. I'm done with that. I'm done with selling things. And I want to be more that, like Lisa said, the inner child, the only one that understands, the only one that knows how to communicate with God, because the language of God is something between the mind and the soul, the mind and the heart. It's not a feeling and it's not a thought, it's in between, and it's not expressed in language. You know it, you feel it, but you feel it not in the ordinary feelings. It's like a deeper than a feeling. It's a, I don't know what to call it.
Well, one of the things that these new planets are doing, believe it or not, they're trying to pave the way for this. But the first thing they got to do, and they've been at this since 2008, they got to clear the junk out of the way first. That's why you've seen such ridiculous. Go ahead, John.
Jesus said this, unless you become like a little child, you'll never enter the kingdom of heaven.
There's really nothing else to say, is there?
But how do we become a little child?
By speaking the truth and putting a period at the end and put a smile and saying to the other person, this is a cool idea. And I see you're really a cool person too, aren't you?
Okay, if
People love to hear that.
when I speak as a little child, tough guys don't believe me.
We don't care what tough guys think. We care what Professor Linda says. Professor Linda has been sitting there going like this for 5 minutes, and I know when she. Go ahead, John. What?
Ego starts going, because I know I'm smarter than that.
Don't worry about these tough guys that know nothing. Let's hear the professor. Thank you so much, John.
That's all I have to say.
Unmute yourself, Linda. What's on your mind being a professor at a significant college?
Well, I mean, I want to go back and say something about Afghanistan and the Pluto return in a minute, but I wanted to share something if I can find it, because I pulled it up and now I've lost it again because I'm so bad at it. A major theorist in my own field who was, and of course, because he's written books, still is influential in what I would call a kind of love-based pedagogy that grows out of respect for individuals in and out of the classroom. He passed away this week, and it was a great shock to many of us. I mean, he was in his 70s. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, although looking at 70 myself, that seems very young right now. I feel quite as if this is not elderly business anymore. But an article that in response to this, I saw quoted him, and he says, "It is not terror that fosters learning, it is hope. Everyday heroics, the power of the common play of the human mind." And that seems to me very much a grassrooty kind of thing. That we go in, that if we're going to be effective, we have to go into the classroom with hope and not judgment. And we have to instill, we have to create an environment that allows students to feel hope that they can learn, hope that the learning will matter to them and all those kinds of things. So in terms of education, that's sort of where I am right now. I think that, as I told a student the other day, I said, LaRoche is signing my paychecks, but I work for the guy upstairs. I don't work for anybody other than that anymore, not at my age. But I wanted to say a little bit about stories in Afghanistan and the power of that. I think that we're in the mess we're in Afghanistan right now because of the US Pluto return. Because I think we're being called to look at this notion that we can go anywhere in the world and just Bigfoot everything, and that it's all going to work out, and we can make all these wonderful promises and bring democracy to everybody, when at home, we're a just giant mess. Okay, so this 20-year adventure in Afghanistan has fallen apart. And it wasn't just Joe Biden. Joe Biden finally pulled the plug on it, and as he should have. But even we can take it to Trump, we can go back to Obama, we can go back to Bush. It doesn't matter. All of it was a giant an arrogance, if you will, a misuse of power. Okay, so we're coming to reckon with that, and I think we're sliding along a knife's point, and it can go either way. I mean, we can either use the end of this adventure as a way to move away from the sort of business that we can trace clear back to Vietnam all the way through, where what we're doing is expending our resources on bombs and drones rather than on healthcare and education and the things that would make human life and global climate change, things that would make human life better. But in terms of stories, many of you might have seen Rachel Maddow's show the other day, where she, presented the story of a major, a military, an army major, I guess, from or an Air Force major or Marine, I don't know what he was, but he's in Connecticut. And he was trying to get his Afghan translator and his translator's family out of Afghanistan this week. And he's one man. He's one man. He got on the phone. He called everybody he could think of. He got Dick Durbin, who's on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, involved in it, and he couldn't get him out. He called military people. He called people in Afghanistan. He called people in Pakistan. He called people in Washington. He called people down the road and up and down, days and days and days. He's on the phone calling and texting people, trying to get this family out of Afghanistan. And finally, last night on the Rachel Maddow show, there's the photo of the family on the plane, wheels up out of Afghanistan. One man connecting to all these other men, because the grassroots, the grassroots is connected to the other grassroots. One person is connected to another person and another person, and nothing is impossible. When we have to at least, as he said, we have to try. There were times when he was in despair that these people were going to die, that his friend was going to be killed, that these five children, very young, wouldn't survive this. And now they're on their way wherever they're taking them. But we now have an opportunity with these are going to be Afghan refugees, in the same way that years ago I had a Cambodian foster family as refugees who came to the United States and who are very dear to me. These Afghan people are going to be coming to this country, and we have an opportunity to change the narrative on immigration to embrace them. And
you're exactly right. And the number one thing about the Pluto return is we're being tested, and there's no way around this. The final report cards have been turned in, the final test papers. We're being tested on have we abused our power. That's what Pluto is determining. Another thing, and then I'll get to Susan's question. Another thing, when these planets are making these loops that they're making, it's not just they come by and, oh, it's tough times. Another thing they do, they bring a powerful impetus to help us get started again. All we got to do is say, I'm willing to go down to the horse farm and try out one of those horses. I'm willing. My butt's not real thick. I'm not, I might get sore, but I'm willing to get on one and try it. And so when you start up something, the planets really, really get behind you. They bring you other people, they bring you money, they bring you other organizations, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the time. And I told you over and over, people used to call me and say, well, I've been thinking about doing this and What would you like to do? Well, I don't know. I look at the chart. I'll look at the chart. Let's take a look. Where's the planets at? Let's see how you're doing. But now that's not what they're doing. What they're doing now is if you think of it, do it. If you think of it, do it. Because it's not you thinking of it. Get out of your head that it's you. You're being inspired from spirit. You're being inspired from the collective need. And most of you are not thinking opening another saloon. Most of you are inspired to do something very helpful and grassroots like. Now, Susan asked in one of her texts, where was Pluto at the time that we entered Afghanistan? About 20 years ago, Pluto was about 2/3 of the way through Sagittarius. Pluto was in Sag from 1995 to 2008. And that's when it really got grim. So you're exactly right about the equivalence of the end of that war with the Pluto return. But these people in Afghanistan, they're not winning anything. What do you think they're going to win? They're getting rid of us and the Russians. Okay, but the real winning is what John talked about. There's only one winning. It's what John talked about, where we get love at the basis of all of our institutions, what both Johns talked about, where we get love at the basis of all our grassroots. And you all know when you're growing something from the grassroots, it's got to be with love. We got another side from south of the border. Trust would solve every problem now. Exactly. And what is the trust? The trust is somebody's got your back. And I can't tell you how many readings I do with people, and it always ends there. It always ends at the very end of the reading with the person not knowing how they're going to pull it off. And I keep telling you, you got to start trusting up here, or the rare person like yesterday already knew it. She already had tremendous intuition, and she knows that she's got her back covered. So the spirit is helping us. We need to get out of the way. So as we wind down, any final comments, questions from anybody? Did I lose my voice, Liza?
Well, I think what we're all saying here toward the end is that, again, no matter who we are or what level of power we have, whether we're in the intricacies of government or just one individual, we're either operating from love or fear. And that other person is only operating from love or fear. And that really helped me in my work as a social worker and in other things that I do, is to understand that difference between how people, why their difference in their motivation. And then, if it was from fear, it was my job to be love and response, and to support them and help them. And I think that's what we're all talking about. And if it's love, then we're all working together for the same purpose. So.
Anybody else? I saw some people had their hand raised. It's Miss Claudia Del Cid. Go, Claudia.
Yeah, I had a couple of things. Number one, I wanted to ask and really talk about the Neptune opposition. Now, when did you say it was going to be exact?
February.
Okay, well, we're right there. Okay. The opposition is funny because, you're seeing this obvious misuse of just lies, just lies and, fog and
smoke and mirrors.
Absolutely. You're seeing it all over the place. You don't know what's real anymore. But at the very same time, I'm also seeing, and maybe it's just because where my energy is a lot of people are questioning their own spiritual self. And that gives me a lot of, because at first when I started to think about that, I was like, oh shit, it's just, we're in a bad place in the US, in the world. But with the mistrust and the lying and the lack of moral compass, but today, really on this show, I realized, wait a minute, just at the same time that I'm seeing all of that, I'm also seeing how people are questioning and getting closer to their center, their soul center.
Yeah.
And it's not just the people on this show, it's other people, and I find very encouraging. Maybe it's just me, but that's we'll see. Sometimes you gotta, like I always say, you really have to suffer enough until you've opened your heart in a pure way. And then the other thing I wanted to say was from the first thing that Liza said, which was one of the latest things she said was talking about joy. And then we went to Marsha and she talked about storytelling. And we went to John, who talked about emotional intelligence, went to the other John. We pretty much everybody has touched on something that from that moment that she said that, I always am so inspired by children because they are 100% honest. They don't have any filters. I have a picture of myself as a little girl, and I look at her because I want to get back to her. In many ways, of course we're adults and everything, but the trust, the love, the purity of children is something that we still are, but we forget. And I'm glad that there are so many people here that, feel that very same way, that getting back to that purity of children. Because I look at children and I go, wow, she just told the exact truth, like it was nothing. There was no malice, there was no judgment, that's just what children do. And yet as adults we forget that, and because I don't know why, but for many reasons, but they're just pure love.
Well, let me show you one. Thank you, Claudia. I'll show you one more thing as we end. It's really significant in the United States chart. We'll take a look here. This shocked me. I didn't even really see this until maybe 9 months ago. And when I saw this in the United States chart, I was just knocked over. It's so problematic. This is the birth chart. And we were born, there was no Neptune. Okay, 1776. Neptune came about in the 19th century. But once it was put on the map, once we figured out where it was in 1776, at 22 degrees of Virgo, it's square almost exactly to the Mars. The Mars is in Gemini, square to Neptune. This is a really challenging aspect. And right now, Neptune is opposite. So we got Neptune opposite Neptune, both squaring the Mars. And the Mars is in Gemini. Well, what does that mean? It means that the Europeans were salivating when they saw the new promised land. Mars in Gemini, go there. The roads are open. You can claim the land. It's virgin territory. It's all there for the wanting. Well, that had its place, but Mars and Neptune don't mix well because Neptune's very, very powerfully spiritual, and Mars in Gemini is very small and it's playing in the sandbox. So this is one of the reasons that we have so much trouble with Mars in Gemini. It's the disposable society that we have. We all keep thinking that things are messed up. We'll just hit the reset button. We still think we're playing a game. This is really the trouble right now. And we have to start realizing that when Neptune's involved, all other planets need to get out of the way. Picture the Pope or Jesus or whatever coming down the aisle and everybody bowing. That's what Neptune should be. All planets should bow to Neptune because Neptune is the Christ-like planet. It's the Christ consciousness. It's the planet that means we're all one. We all need to be gentle and loving towards each other. But our problem in the US is that we got the Neptune square to Mars. We want to go play some more. Let's go play here. Let's go play here. We're so much into diversion, getting into diversion instead of dealing with the real facts, the real issues. And with all that Saturn's doing and Pluto and Eris are doing, they're making the really serious stuff prima facie right now. So once again, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight on a very difficult show, difficult subject. Thank especially Liza because of her tremendous additions. And to once again, mainly try to re-inspire each other, to go do stuff, to go talk to people, to go say, no, this is not it. To go say to people, no, we can't keep our head in the sand. We've got to get involved. So things are changing. They're on the up and up. Don't fall prey to thinking that this was a talk about doomsday, because it's not. Keep the faith, and we'll just keep coming at you every Thursday until you do. Okay?
We will be back.
I hope you're all back. Enjoy
Yes.
Montana,
Liza.
Susan.
Thanks,
Thank you
Rick.
very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Love you.
Have a good night.
Love you, everybody.
Love y'all.
Love you.